this episode of DG Recruit Podcast, I'm so excited to feature Mike Mello. Welcome to the podcast, Mike.
Thank you so much for having me. Glad to be here.
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely. We're so happy to have you here, and we can't wait to dive into all the topics we're going to get into. So first, before we jump into questions, what a bit about yourself, your recruitment background, and just give us a little overview about what you're up to.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been in staffing for 10 years. Fortunate enough to work with amazing clients, work with some of the best mentors. I just walked away from a really great book of business to start my own agency. And most people were under the assumption that I was going to start my own staffing agency. And I actually started a revenue operations agency. And what the agency is focused on, it's three main pillars. One is LinkedIn founder-led content creation. So anyone who follows me might see my videos and might see my posts and how I engage with my customers. It is helping founders create a brand, create a strategy on LinkedIn. It's a done-for-you service. The other two, one is a lead generation service where we help you identify your ICP. We use tools like Clay and Appify and N8N to build outreach automations for you. And then lastly, we help with internal back office automations. So again, using tools like N8N, using tools like make.com to help you streamline your operations and essentially make your firm more profitable.
That all sounds like music to my ears. Who wouldn't want any of those services? It all sounds really next gen. Very excited to see your business thrive, and I can't wait to hear more success stories. So before we jump to Recruitment 3.0, let's get started on how did you break into the staffing industry? How did you get your start?
Sure, yeah. So I started June 8th, 2015. I started as a recruiter. I was 2.5 years out of the military, pretty raw. And I had a close family friend who was working in staffing. He was crushing it. We were, 24. I had just turned 25, and he was servicing an enterprise account, traveling all over, making a lot of money, having a lot of fun. Had a lot of stress too, like anyone who works in our industry does. But yeah, I saw him. He was crushing it. He got me an interview with probably about $150 million at the time, a company called Diverson, eventually got bought out. But yeah, he got me that interview. I started as a recruiter. I was an okay recruiter. I wasn't great. And they eventually moved me into sales where, I loved it. It took off. It took me about a year to really get my bearings and understand the industry. But once I got started, I did really well. And I was fortunate enough to grow my book of business to just around $20 million when I left a few months back. And that was my start back in 2015.
Awesome. And that is very common. We hear a lot of folks that knew someone, likely a close friend, also in your early 20s, and you're like, how are you living that life? I want that lifestyle. And then that's how they get into the business. So very, very interesting. And we do see that quite a bit. Like that's a decent proportion of how people find this obscure job. Awesome. So you mentioned you started doing really well once you got more into the sales side. So from your experience, both as a recruiter as well as a salesperson, and obviously every firm is different, but what did you see the income potential, whether it was your direct experiences or those of people around you? Like, what do you think are the real earning potentials within either side of the business or just what you've heard in general?
Earning potential. Yeah, absolutely. The earning potential in our industry is phenomenal. I still remember being 25 years old and we could calculate the spread because we were, at the time the spreads were public. So if somebody was doing, 30, 40, 50K in weekly spread, I could just look up my calculator, what they were making. And that was very motivating for me as someone who didn't come from much. So I was fortunate enough to be in a smaller agency that was transparent about the commission rates and what people were bringing in. And I knew there were people making, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 in that office. So it was very motivating for me. It's still an industry that has an extremely high income has extremely high income potential. The last, year, 2 years, 3 years in tech, it's been a little bit down, and there's definitely some folks who are struggling. But I can tell you, I talk with founders every day. There are tons of people that are still absolutely crushing it. So in 2015, the income potential was high, and it is still high today in 2025.
For sure. And for those listening, some of them are either considering this career, some of them are probably early on in this career where they might not see the numbers, especially if they're at a small boutique. So, from what you've seen, what is the range of what truly top producers, even as early as 2 to 3 years, how much can they really earn in this business? Let's say regular market conditions, a
2 to 3
range.
years. I mean,
Yeah.
I would say I would say probably like two, all right, 2 to 3 years. So let me think about what I was making back then. Yeah, I think like 150 to like 250 you could be making within your first 2 to 3 years. I mean,
Mhm.
there's no reason you can't.
Yep.
There's a lot of good people in our industry that make, between two and 300K. And then your top performers are four, five, six. And then, I know people who've made over $1 million,
Right.
especially on the contingent labor side.
Right. Because contingent labor is a whole nother like business opportunity, which is very different than traditional direct hire. But yeah, I mean, there are rarer and less people along those spectrums, but the potential is still there. And of course, overnight, you're not going to get to $1 million. Those folks probably in the business for at least 5, 6, 7 years, which isn't a lot of time,
Yeah, I
which actually
mean,
isn't a lot of time.
yeah, look, I spoke to a founder a week ago who didn't have a recruiting background, and he made over 400K in his first year. I know people that have started their own agencies, and were making a couple $1 million in revenue their first few years. So
Yeah.
the thing with staffing and recruiting, right? It all gets lumped in as staffing and recruiting as its own industry, which it is. However, what vertical you support is really what matters. So the how healthcare is doing is going to be different than how tech is doing, right? Ask somebody the moment the pandemic happened, ask somebody who was staffing up nurses how they did, and then ask somebody who was staffing up tech how they did, right?
Right.
The same staffing and recruiting, but the industry that you support is really that's what matters most, and that's what's going to be most intertwined with the success that you have.
Absolutely. It's a contributing factor. There is a level of personal talent, but there's also some market conditions that can impact everyone, right? Like rising, what is it? Rising tide lifts all boats or something
That's
along
right.
those
Yeah.
lines. But yeah, now you look at healthcare, things are a lot different than so absolutely. Some of this is also market relevant. But if you're at a great agency that is niched in, no matter what year, you're still going to do all right if they have good principals, if they have good sales folks. Like, obviously,
Absolutely.
there's a lot of factors, absolutely. But the financial income opportunity is non negotiable. It's definitely there. It's just, are you in a position to really get yourself to that level? So, absolutely see your points on all of that. You mentioned earlier that you weren't a huge fan of recruiting, and that's very common. We see in a lot of top sales folks. So, this is a good segue into what parts of the job did you find yourself more interested in? What part of the job, for whatever reason, did you not like as much? And how did that shape your career direction?
Yeah, great question. My favorite part about my staffing career, and now my career as a founder of a RevOps agency that supports staffing companies, my favorite part is client acquisition and relationship building. Um, it's very hard, and it's difficult, and it is lonely at times. It took me a year to really get my feet under me in my first year of staffing. And he won't say it to me today, but I'm sure that my boss was thinking about letting me go because I wasn't producing. But the thing is, if you are doing the right things over a consistent time period, like everything will work out, right? If you're consistent with how many calls you make, how many emails you send. In this day and age, posting on LinkedIn, like that is one of the best things you can do because it expedites the time that your buyer gets to know you, right? So when you first get on a call with them, they should already have an idea of how you work, what you stand for, what your values are, what line of service you support, right? So to answer your question, my favorite part was and is client acquisition, working with clients to solve problems, building rapport, going through highs, going through lows with my customers. My least favorite part, yeah, probably data entry, probably like entering stuff into the CRM. Um, that's the first thing that comes to mind. But look, there is so many downs in staffing and recruiting. Um, you know, that you can do everything right and you can still get an email on Sunday night from someone saying, I decided I'm not going to be starting tomorrow, right? Um, I think for anyone starting in the industry or for anyone who's a veteran, the more emotional temperament that you can exercise, the better off you're going to be. And I think just learning to manage some of those highs and lows is helpful. Um, so that was one thing that I struggled with in the beginning of my career, but then you build up a tolerance for it.
Mhm. What do you think helped you build that tolerance and kept you going when you're getting beat down, when you're learning something new that was so challenging, different? And like, what kept you going in that initial tough time? Because a lot of people are going through that now. A lot of people, perhaps even having seen success, are going through tough times right now because of the client acquisition piece being more and more difficult, whatever reason is causing that. But from your perspective, what keeps people going in those periods of challenge, especially when you first started off?
Yeah, it's a great question. For me, like I'm a vet. I did 3 deployments around the world, and I worked in 115-degree weather, you know, in Kenya. Like I've been through harder times. So yeah, it was hard, but I saw a lot of potential and I saw people doing really well. And I always had the visual that if as long as I can push through this, there's something very good for me. Look, starting my own revenue operations agency, like it's super hard. I'm working from 7:30 in the morning to 8, 9 o'clock at night, every night, 6 days a week. But I think the more you can exercise and be connected to just this like idea of delayed gratification, I think you make it. Staffing and recruiting is also cyclical. So there's ups and downs, right? There's ups and downs in a specific year. I mean, how many times do you see something where, there's a great year and then a company will offshore a lot of their contractors or go to a cost cutting strategy. And then in another year or 2 years, they bring many of those resources back on site. So um I was fortunate enough to have like a good visualization of what the light at the end of the tunnel looked like. And I was fortunate enough to push through that.
Hmm. Absolutely. And from your perspective of like being able to push through, what did you say to yourself every day to keep going? Because you had this larger vision, but what did you do? You mentioned earlier you learned some new skills about how to manage your emotions. Do you have any tips on that front on how specifically did you learn those skills, or what were those beliefs that you held to keep you
Yeah.
going?
Oh, these are such good questions. Like I love this part of it because um your mindset will shape everything, and how you view something will be the outcome of your life. Your perspective will shape your perception on, or excuse me, your perception will shape your perspective, right? Like how you view something is what it is. Look, this sounds corny, but I have my little journal, and every single morning I write what I'm grateful for, what I'm working towards, and what will make today a great day. And they are very simple. It is nothing complex. This is, I'm going to spend 45 minutes today, with my daughter, uninterrupted. Phone is in the drawer. I'm going to eat healthy today. I'm going to create 10 pieces of LinkedIn content, right? I am working towards, when I was working in staffing, like a big goal of mine is like I wanted to place 1,500 people. I didn't get to that. I got to 1,300. And a big goal of mine was to be the number one salesperson at my company. So I was constantly working towards that. And I think the more you can be focused on direction, and it sounds cheesy, right? But I'm telling you, write it down, read it, make it a part of your identity. If someone texts me or calls me right now and it is not in line with my goals, it's not a fault to me, right? Because I'm like so tunnel vision on what I want, what will make today a great day, and then also what am I grateful for, right? Like what are the good things going on in my life? So I encourage everyone, and again, I know it feels corny, but I encourage everyone, write that stuff down, read it, and it will shape the way you view not just work, but it will shape the way you view your life as well.
Hmm. I think that's a really good tip. And a lot of sales companies do believe in that and have trained us on goal setting, KPI setting, vision boarding, vision exercises. And you see some of the most successful staffing firms, they do spend quite a decent amount of time come middle of the month, year, end of the year, every single end of the month, driving those visions. So, vision, success, goal setting, adding the grateful, that's something different. We never had to be grateful for anything in our job. It was just like, do the work.
Yeah.
But have the thought of gratefulness, gratitude, it just adds that extra bit of human element, which I love. I love that about your approach, which is really inspiring. I think that's a great habit. Just
Yeah,
like getting
thank
into the
you. Yeah,
habit.
and
Yeah.
I'm telling you, I don't know if you ever heard of a book called Start with Why by Simon Sinek, but that's a phenomenal book. And
Hmm.
people who have a deep why, they do better. They have a clearer vision. It's easier for them to operate under hard conditions. Making a lot of money is great. Building up a staffing firm, selling a staffing firm, being part of an exit, getting to 75K in weekly gross profit, whatever your specific goals are in staffing, that's great. But if you don't have a deep why, it's hard to persevere through the tough times, you know? And yeah, I encourage everybody to really think about why you're doing what you're doing, and it will make everything much more clear for you.
Absolutely. I think that's a great point. The why. Why are you doing what you're doing? And aligning everything you do with the why. And so, what made you at a certain point in your career realize that you should pursue this entrepreneurship route? That's really interesting that you've done that, experiencing so much success, but then start your own company. What made you break off into this entrepreneurship journey?
Yeah, it wasn't an easy decision. I'm sure you speak with a lot of people where maybe they have a bad experience with staffing and recruiting, or maybe they have tough bosses, or maybe they were put in a situation where the probability of them being successful is unlikely. That's the exact opposite for me. I had phenomenal mentors. Like I had some of the best mentors in the industry that went through exits and understood mergers and understood how to motivate someone and push them to their max without burning them out. Even the company that I left, I had great leadership. Uh, the main reason I left was because I saw this opportunity, and I feel that I have this skill that I can scale quicker and faster than I could just scale my book of business, right? I had over 130 people on billing when I quit. And most people don't do that. And again, it was not an easy decision by any means, but I feel with the agency I have now, with content, with automation, lead generation, and backend automation, I feel I can scale this much greater and much quicker than I could with my actual staffing book of business. Um, I've been posting on LinkedIn for probably 18 months. I was posting on TikTok and Instagram years before that. There's such an opportunity for staffing founders to create good content, to create good branding, tell their story, and drive their business through that. And now, with all of the AI tools and the right automation, there's such an opportunity to run leaner and run more efficiently. And it's an opportunity that I wanted to seize. And again, I spoke with my wife, and we had a very in-depth conversation, and it was really hard to walk away from the money I was making and the reputation I built. But in order for there to be growth, you cannot stand still. And I'm ecstatic about what we're building here with SimpleSide AI.
And speaking of SimpleSide AI, we definitely want to get your take as an AI expert on how is AI going to impact the staffing recruitment industry. What are your thoughts being on that side of the desk and leveraging that technology as your business offering?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so I have very mixed opinions on AI and what it's doing for staffing. First and foremost, I say this: staffing and recruiting is still the relationship business. So you can buy the greatest automation tool that sends a million messages a day to your exact ICP, But if you don't view staffing as a relationship business, you are not going to be as successful as you possibly can. So staffing first and foremost is a relationship business. I think some of the AI tools are phenomenal. And now with the automation tools, you can combine different tasks that you couldn't before. That's where I see the real opportunity. I'll give you the background to how I started playing around with some of these AI tools and the automation workflows. Roughly 4 months ago, I went through, I was seeing all of the AI ads like everyone and getting all these message for different AI softwares and automation tools. And I started playing around and learning them. I built a few automation tools with N8N and make very simple, scraping LinkedIn, using GPT to help me come up with messaging quicker. And some of them started to work really well. I had a couple of friends ask me about them, and I built one or two for my friends, and they started to get some results. And then someone else had said, "Hey, would you build one for me?" And I was like, I don't have the time to do it. And then he was like, "Well, how much would it cost?" And I was like, "Oh, I think I have something here." So that's how I started with that. I'm excited about AI's capabilities. I'm excited about tools like Clay. I'm excited about tools like N8N. But I think the overwhelming majority of tools out there are overhyped. And I think that the idea that you're just going to automate all of your messaging and you think that's going to work, but then you get upset when you get automated messaging, I feel it's kind of silly. So a big part of SimpleSide AI is personalized automation. It's not working with a founder and sending out 1,000 messages. It's working with a founder and understanding their exact ICP. Okay, great. Your ICP is a CFO at a company that does between 30 and $80 million. Okay, great, right? It's creating messaging around the pain points that ICP faces every day and giving them value and automating that. But it's not automation at scale. And I want to be very clear about that, right? Like this isn't a play where we send 1,000 messages a day. It's where we use technology and these AI tools to figure out what problems your ICP is facing and automate that, and then help you get more meetings and help you get better leads.
I love that. I think that you're taking the best of both worlds, traditional relationship building through relationship means, but then also leveraging technology to help with some of the lead gen, the admin, I'm sure that you've discussed that nobody likes doing, all the admin work. That's where I think AI can do it. And I guess overall, you've been a huge content creator for so long, and I love what you do with LinkedIn. So take a look at Mike's LinkedIn. I love your videos. I love the production quality.
Thank you.
What do you see coming from content? Because there's still a lot of folks that are still wrapping their head around it, even though it's now 2025. Folks are still like, should I invest the time? What really is the result? What do you see for us here?
Yeah. So let me start with content is the quickest way to improve your business. It's the quickest way. So for me, it did two things. One, it got my brand out and my messaging out, which really did two things. One, people who would want to work with me, who have similar values, who like what type of person I am, it helped them understand me quicker. It also helps funnel people out. There are some folks that might look at my content and say, this guy's a maniac. He's playing basketball at 5 a.m. He's running all over. He's, juggling a million different things at once, right? So good content will bring in the type of folks that you want to work with, and it will also funnel some of the folks out. There's one gentleman, his name is eluding me right now, but he's super talented, and he's like a little direct, probably more direct than I am. And I listened to him on a podcast, and he talked about how he is intentionally that way and intentionally with like this high achiever mindset because he doesn't want, in his own words, C and B players reaching out to him, right? So that is such an interesting approach. But posting your story, talking about your wins, talking about the problems that you solve. I met with somebody a few months ago, and he told me his numbers and all the success he had and the accounts he was supporting, and I was like, I've followed you for like 7 months and I know none of this, right? Like you're so talented. Why would you not put that out there? Your customer deserves to know who you are and who they're dealing with. And I think that's a healthy way to frame it as well. Your customer should know what you're doing. Your customer should know what problems you solve, what problems you don't solve. it makes their decision making and their vendor selection easier for them. So yeah, I think everyone who works in staffing, especially the people who have had success, they should be posting.
I agree with every single thing you said, especially the quietness. Why are people hiding their most amazing elements when social media exists, where you can start shouting about your achievements? That is a missed opportunity if you continue to ignore the tools that we have. So, to close out today's conversation, what other tips, tricks, or just in general insights that you would give to anyone in the recruitment community that is looking to be successful, looking to grow? I know you already shared tons of tips all throughout, but what is just one more takeaway you'd love for people to make sure they keep in mind as they go about their day?
Absolutely. Yeah, I would say be optimistic about where staffing and recruiting is going. Carry that with you, because if you believe in your heart that AI is going to take our jobs, or companies don't want to pay for our service, or it's impossible to grow a book of business, none of that is true. And if you allow that to creep into your mindset, you will not be successful. I just and I want to I don't talk about how much money I was making, just because I do feel it can be somewhat unbecoming, but I was making a lot of money. And I
Yeah.
grew up in Section 8 housing. I grew up with a single mother. I was making a very nice W-2 for years and years and years. And I walked away from that specifically to support the staffing industry, no other industry. So I have put all of my chips in the staffing industry, and I believe that things are going to be better than ever. And I think it's going to get leaner, but I think staffing firms are going to get more efficient. I think firms are going to focus more on content and telling their story and attracting the right ICP, not just servicing anyone, right, but really niching down. And I think the right automation tools, right, the custom automation tools that are personalized, that talk about the specific problems you solve, I think they're going to do great things for many firms. I also think smaller firms now can compete. I think a firm that's at $2 million to $50 million, I think that firm can compete with the billion-dollar staffing firms, through relationships, through great messaging, and through brand building. So I gave you a long-winded answer. So be optimistic about where our industry is going, because I think we have some of the best years ahead of us.
Every year is going to be a great year. I love that optimism. And I think it's very important for everyone to be positive. Like you said, with all the negative messaging, negative news travels the fastest. And you're right. How can you maintain a positive outlook? I love what you said earlier about going all in on staffing. I think you do have to have an all in mindset to succeed in this business. And that is still going to be the differentiator between people who rise to the top of this industry versus those who find that it's not for them. They're not all in. They're all out. They're leaving. And that's good because, like you said, it's giving those people that are all in, that are using the tools to operate leaner, meaner, and do a much better job for their staff, their clients, their candidates themselves. And I can't wait to see what your business does. Can't wait to continue following you and watching you. So, can you give everyone the best way to stay in touch with you and where they can find you?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm active on LinkedIn, right? Anytime you visit my LinkedIn, you can go right to my website. Website is simplesideai.com. And again, we work with small and mid-sized staffing firms to help them specifically make their firms more profitable. And we do that with content, lead generation, automation. I tell founders this. I know how hard it is to build a book of business. Like, I get it. I did it for 10 years. Our goal is to help as many staffing firms as we can, and we understand staffing. So the content that we produce, the automations that we build, it is specifically designed for our industry. So yeah, website is simplesideai.com, and I'm active on LinkedIn. And anybody who's interested in our services, what we do, be more than happy to see if it's a fit.
Great. I'm excited for you to change our industry as we know it and continue leading the way. Thank you for being a guest on our show, and wish you and SimpleSide AI utmost success 2025 and beyond.